Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Streamed live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation, and I'm joined this morning by my good friend and my brother,
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Tommy. How are you?
Doing well, Eric. I am in the beautiful city of Greensboro, North Carolina.
Okay.
My son and I are visiting North Carolina A&T State University here in Greensboro. For those who are less familiar, there was a situation in the United States where department stores, in some cases, would allow African Americans to visit and maybe purchase items, but they could not stay, sit, and eat. And so in 1960, there were 4 young men who attended North Carolina A&T who decided to go into a Woolworth store here in Greensboro and purchase some items and then sit at a counter, a dining counter, and they were refused service. And then after a few weeks of being refused service, Eric, and other students participating, we then had the launch of the United States Civil Rights Movement, 1960, Greensboro, North Carolina. And so I'm here because my son wants to attend North Carolina A&T. And then obviously we're going to take it in the city. Things have changed, but things have stayed the same in many, many ways. And so that's what I'm doing today. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I am too, Tommy. There's nothing more rewarding than, seeing your children go to another level in their journey to achieve their goals and prepare themselves for adulthood and independence, man. So I know that you are literally just thrilled to death to be there. I know, man.
I am.
I'm happy for you. The drive time, the conversations that you have there, or just the peaceful listening to music or whatever, all of that is a beautiful thing. And so the week for me has been exciting, man. I still love what we are doing. We're having to navigate all of the attacks that are coming against us. And I'm beginning to get a little more active on asking our community, where are you? Because right now we are in the midst of what I'm calling a systemic effort to really take apart DEI. And really, it's a misinformation campaign that's underway. And I think that people that do this work or value this work think that you can just kind of sit back as people strategize around how to dismantle this work. If you were ever looking for examples of structural racism, sexism, heterosexism, that is what you're seeing right now. People within structures and systems of power literally trying to dismantle all of the progress and the work that is built on the blood, sweat, tears, and lives of people who initiated civil rights. And you know what? I think I wrote a comment in one of my posts that said, we are seeing how effective the dominant culture can be at accomplishing something when they really value it.
Yes.
And so they are dismantling what has taken 70 years to try to, cobble together and put in place and actually be taken down, in, weeks, months. And so I believe that, and what we're going to talk about today in part is sort of how do we save our nation from being so wrapped up in our identity politics that we forego, ignore, not interested in talking about and working on the things that are most necessary for our own well-being.
So you spoke to this, Eric, and I don't want to pass by too fast. You talk about the dominant culture and its concerted, its deliberate efforts to dismantle some past works and maybe even accomplishments, and in some cases, even history, things that have already happened that are validated and real. The dominant culture, if there's a sense that they are uncomfortable, if there's a risk to their own collective identity, if there is some anxiety based on the uncertainty of the future, they would put together their machine and with either facts, truths, lies, or half truths, dismantle it altogether. And that's what happens, and where the kind of the underrepresented or the non-dominant group or culture, they can yell, scream to say, no, it really happened. And the dominant culture say, no, it didn't. Are you going to believe me or believe history?
Right.
And that's what happens. And oftentimes folks say, I don't want to really delve into history, what really happened. I want to believe what I'm comfortable with. And that may be what the dominant culture is saying. And so we're in this kind of twilight zone of reality. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was listening to this podcast, How to Save America, and got introduced to Liliana Mason. She's a professor at Johns Hopkins University, and just really brilliant and doing a lot of work in this space to help us to understand what we're in the midst of. And I think that many of us then need to help point people towards others who are doing wonderful research to understand this twilight zone time that we are in. And while we are being, some are being entertained, we are really being lulled to sleep by a small group of racist, sexist, biased people who are then having a greater impact on a larger group of people that may not even be aware of the strategy that's being put in place to take down the value of marginalized people, and really undermines what's in the best interest of this country. I was just for example, take a look at this. Right now, Joe Biden, the Democrats and the Republicans in the Senate are about to do, they're trying to do something that hasn't been done in 30 years, come up with some immigration legislation for the safety of the border. Now, why is it that former President Donald Trump would be fighting against first-time legislation to really do something significant at the border? And why would the House already say it's dead on arrival when they haven't even seen the legislation?
Oh, it's simple. It's simple. And I know you're going to go there. I'm going to jump in, Eric.
Go for it.
Because it's not him.
That's right.
That was his campaign. That was his idea of saving the borders, saving America for security. And because this is now on the precipice of passing, and he is not the president in real time, then he and his party is going to push back, right? And this may very well change if he becomes president of the United States in November. By December or less, at least the next, Senate hearing, it's going to come into law, right? Those are my thoughts.
Right. But the problem is that it's unlikely that even if he's president, that he can get this into law. Okay. Because you need 60 votes in the Senate.
Yep.
And the Democrats are never going to play ball with you. And so we are at a perfect storm right now because the Democrats need a win. And the Republicans see this as something that's valuable to them in the Senate. And so they have put together an unholy alliance. But Biden has demonstrated an ability to bring together the parties in some instances to do things together. And so he is, no matter what you think about Sleepy Joe, and we see him limping along and all like that, he is not opposed to America's progress. And right now, he's really leading the way because our democratic cities are recognizing that this is unsustainable to have just people pouring across the borders. So that people, you can convince people to do something that's not in their own best interest because somebody else might win. And what Donald Trump is saying right now, don't do it unless you get 100% of what you.
100%.
That's hilarious. He never going to get 100% of anything, but he knows that he actually needs this. And the reason why Democrats and Republicans haven't worked as hard on immigration reform is because it's been useful for both sides to just fight about. So as long as we can have a good thing to fight about, then we will maintain that. And so I'm going to sort of go down just a few things that were mentioned so that we can have discussion here about the relevancy of this in our own lives and how it should influence the decisions that we are making. There are two or three questions that they were asking. What drives our political behavior? How can we build alliances that transcend our identity? And what can we do together to establish sort of a bigger we? Because it seems like there are some natural. So let me start with the first one. They talked about, we assume that people are rational actors. Rational actors meaning that we will make decisions that are in our own economic best interest. And they're saying that's not so. That actually, if you can get people to fear sort of other groups enough, if you can drive up their fear enough, then you can get them to make decisions that are not in their own best interest. In other words, if you tell me that group is hurting me, and so if I need to not take healthcare, so that they don't get it. Isn't that crazy? Tell me, what are your thoughts about sort of assuming that people are rational actors, and actually, when it comes to identity politics, we get to a place that we are no longer making decisions that are in our own best interest?
So, Eric, we've talked about emotional intelligence many times over many years, and there is a real concept that we've talked about. It's called emotional hijacking. It's when our emotions overwhelm our logical thinking.
Right.
And so typically we're talking about like love, or I'm angry, or things like that. But when we really talk about political identity or identity politics, if you will, what happens is that collective sense of fear about something else drives up that emotion of either bitterness, anger, etc. And this overwhelms our logical thinking. It means that if I'm not going to win, no one's going to win, including me. And that's what happens. And so you see this in the mob mentality, right? Even let's make a quick analogy: an athletic event, a football game, and you have two football teams playing a game on a field. The people, Eric, in the stands are called fans.
Mm-hmm.
That is short for fanatic. And things that fans or fanatics do in love of their team can indeed hurt themselves. And it does. They get into fights and all that good stuff. They're yelling. And these are sometimes fellow Americans, their neighbors, right? Their coworkers and colleagues. But when that emotion gets to that fever pitch, and it's overwhelming, we do things that we don't really understand. And in this case, we sometimes we don't even care, right? We don't care. And so I just wanted to connect that to emotional intelligence.
I love that. I love that. And so they identified a study, a 1954 study that was done of young white males, fifth graders, that went to a camp, and they were going to the camp and having a ball. And so they were split into two different groups, and like the giraffes and the gerbils or whatever.
Yep.
And so they were there, and then finally, about a few days into their visit, after they'd had time to bond with their little group, they announced to each of them that there was another group at the camp. And they started seeing them right from the beginning of hearing about that other group say, hey, when can we meet them? We want to compete. Soccer, we want to do something so that we can show them that we're better than them. And they were planning on trying to do this experiment for a 3-week period of time. But the hostility and the competition between the groups became so destructive, Tommy, that they had to end the experiment after 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're saying that there is research that says that we have a natural tendency to love our in group and almost compete against, want to destroy those that are different from us. Tommy, what does that mean? How does that show up in our world and in the work that you and I do?
Well, in the world that we do, Eric, particularly diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's not all we do, right? We know this.
Right.
But in the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion, with regards to diversity, that is really understanding and accepting the uniquenesses of each person and their respective communities and identities. That's diversity. Equity is the fair and equitable treatment for those people, right? It's not the golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated. It's the platinum rule, treat others as they would like to be treated.
Right.
And in our work, to treat other people in the way that they would like to be treated, how they would like to learn, how they would like to experience the world, is to better understand them through dialogue and conversation, maybe even research, or even being quiet by listening, right? And then the third of inclusion, right? It could be diversity, equity, and inclusion. Inclusion is the active practice of bringing unity. What we have found or are finding today, Eric, is that there is a significant number of people that truly do not want that diversity. They're uncomfortable. They're fearful of it. They absolutely don't want equity because in their mind, equity is when we give equality or equity to another person, we're losing. We're going to be replaced.
Right.
And so they don't want to be replaced. They don't want to be annihilated. And that's the dominant culture, because there's the non-dominant culture historically have been annihilated.
Right.
From Native Americans to African Americans to our minority ethnic groups who travel and migrate to this country. And so inclusion is not it. And so what we do is we have found in this work today is that not only are people saying, hey, we don't like it, but the people in power are passing legislation to either ban books, the understanding of history. They have created these bills, state bills and laws that will prohibit even the practice of diversity, equity, and inclusion, to prohibit places of higher learning, institutions of higher learning, maybe even academic institutions, K through 12, of having any office of diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging. Any people supporting that, and funding is being eliminated.
Yeah.
Right. That's what's happening today. However, Eric, with all that gloom and doom, this is not new, my friend.
No.
Yeah, this is not new. And
no, not new at all.
What we're experiencing with the identity politics, or what we're experiencing with the passing of these quote unquote anti-DIE or DEI, right? The DIE is for those anti-woke folks, right?
Right.
At the end of the day, we've seen this before.
Yep.
Right. And there are strategies through what's good for humanity will prevail.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. If we stand up, if we don't, then we give people more runway to define the arguments and to give their message some sort of familiarity. So we just start accepting it. And I believe that we're in a place now that we actually have to start calling things out, Tommy. There was a time period where we left Trump alone and we didn't want to. We got to now go after things that are harmful to the country. And we have to recognize our own temptation to be caught up in our own in group. This is not just a philosophy that relates to Republicans and Trump and all like that. It relates to all of us. And when we get a team, if we're not careful, we start making a narrative up about our team and how great and wonderful we are. I am looking at Nikki Haley right now. And I woke up out of a dream earlier this week feeling like I wanted to go to Columbus on the State House and support Nikki Haley. Because, and I believe that right now in this current condition, that the Republican Party is not able to operate as independent thinkers because Trump owns the base. And because he owns the base, he has the power to actually eliminate your career. So then that silences the voices of many. And I know that none of the primary candidates that were going against Trump, they didn't say anything about him because they didn't want to offend the base because they had no chance. So all of them are gone. The only person left standing right now is Nikki Haley. And he wanted Nikki Haley to get out. She wouldn't get out. And he started calling her names P-Brain. I've heard, but I haven't seen it yet, that they're now going after the newest attack is on affairs and things that she's had. Who cares about that up against Trump? And so the reason why part of me said that, supporting Nikki Haley then for me would be what's in the best interest of the country. Like, why wait for Biden and Trump to go against each other if we can get Trump out right now? The polls show that Nikki Haley would beat Joe Biden in a head-to-head race by a significantly large margin. But I don't care about that. I care more about the country. So we have to look at what does it take to really do things that are in our collective best interest. And right now, I think that her play may have been, I'll stay in it, and maybe I can be Trump's vice president if he wins. But I think that he's coming after her so hard that she now is realizing that maybe her only opportunity is to go for the presidency. And for me to have a first woman president, I don't care what party, if they're a rational actor, if they have the ability to kind of generally try to do the things that are right, I value that all day long.
Do you think that if she drops out the race, Trump goes on, as a Republican candidate, would he not select her as his vice president?
I don't think he will now. Trump, I know that he does things that are in his best interest, but he also gets really angry, and that's what we're seeing. And I think that's what's ultimately going to work to his demise, that because he's been so comfortable, he loves power. And I'll tell you, Tommy, I celebrated yesterday that E. Jean Carroll got awarded $83 million. And this is a little case that none of us really even were thinking. I think they were thinking $10 million or something like that. He sort of was found guilty of raping her and then of defaming her while he was president. So he got a $5 million charge there, but he didn't care. He continued on to just blast her and defame her in ways that put her life in jeopardy. Let's just look at the things that he's doing things that are putting people's lives in jeopardy, and not believing completely that he's above the law. So all of those are philosophies and principles that we don't buy into in America. Former President Donald Trump got introduced yesterday to America and to the American justice system, where a jury of your peers can come together and they can make a decision that will have a tremendous impact on your life. And basically the jury said he did not respect our justice system. There was nothing about that 5 million that caused him to slow down. So we're going to give him a number that will get his attention and potentially impact his behavior. 83 million. And so now he's looking at that, railing against it, but he at every turn he's disrespecting our justice system. And he's been able to put it all under the umbrella of political obstruction, and that's just kind of shocking. But I don't know if he's going to even stop here. But they're saying, Tommy, that even to appeal this, some say he'd have to put up $20 million. Others said it might be the whole $83 million to even appeal it. So you got to put that money up. And the problem with putting that money up, Tommy, is that when you lose, it goes right to her. And so right now, welcome to America. The courts, the justice system is not political parties. They're not little House Republicans who don't have enough power to save themselves. You can bully them. This is America. And I just felt excited yesterday that E. Jean Carroll gets some vindication. She gets a chance to believe and experience that this country will not sit back and watch you be bullied illegally forever. And I think Trump didn't even bother hiring real lawyers. Like the woman that's been representing him, she's just an upstart because he thinks I can talk my way through everything. These court cases, these trials have actually been helping me raise more money. And so she was in there saying that they wouldn't let me bring in experts, DNA experts and stuff. That wasn't this trial. That's already been determined. That he raped her, and so that's already done. That's not this trial. This trial is about how much is he going to have to pay because he's continuing to defame her on a regular basis, even during the trial. So the jury said, "Oh, you're going to disrespect the whole process." 83 million. And I think that as the king starts becoming revealed as having no clothes, I think that those are the things that are going to cost him the election.
Hey, Eric, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties on my end, but this is an incredible conversation. I really want you to talk about, as I go on, I'm going to log off and come back on for a better platform. I want you to talk about, with this situation with Trump, and then kind of what's real and what's not real, right? Yeah. So sexual assault or rape, this kind of demagoguing of our culture, right? It's my way, no other way. As we are continuing down this rabbit hole of the Twilight Zone, what does it mean? What's happening? All right. If you could respond to that, and I'm going to come right back on.
Absolutely. So as we look at where we are right now, what's real, what's not, I think that there are many people that are in fear of the changes that we are experiencing as they sort of dissected the Trump electorate or the Republican Party. They basically, the research says that only 30% of them are people who are racist and really race haters and baiters. That 70% of the Republicans in the Republican Party are not sort of, racist like that at all. They're just regular people that are, but where we are today is that identity is so strong that everybody is using it because it's stronger than policies. So that people don't even care what the policies are. And you can see it. They just flip with whatever their side says. And so they are sort of the 70% is focused on their identity and who do I want to be associated with? It's people like me that kind of think like me. And they even said that the 70% of Republicans that are not those active racists don't even recognize fully that the 30% is. They hear them say sort of racist kinds of things, but then they also hear them say, I just want my taxes to be lower. I just want the borders to keep me safe. And so they really are lulled to sleep as a part of this whole collective that is being supercharged by more anger, anger, because emotion is what drives people to act. They were looking at Wisconsin, and they were doing some research there around, what they were thinking about their current beliefs. And they were saying, it's just that those other people, I'm just sick of my tax dollars going into urban areas for those people, which means Black people and others. When the reality is that when you really took apart federal taxes and state taxes that were coming to Wisconsin, the greater percentage of them were going to rural areas. In other words, people in the urban areas were subsidizing people in rural areas in a much greater, in a disproportionately higher way than it was coming the other way. So you don't even know what's happening, but it's just easy to demonize other people. As they looked at Trump's support, at the beginning, he had people that were more of those kind of racist people that were, supporting Trump. But now it's gone to a more diverse group. We even saw that in 2020 that the Latino support for Trump had gone up, but it had gone up mostly because of Latino men. And what we see then is that people, none of us have just one identity. We have multiple identities. And whichever is most salient at a certain time is sort of where we lean in. So you are literally seeing Latino men and African-American men in urban areas on the streets go for Trump. Why? Because whenever you despise somebody that I despise, then I can go for you. So Latino men are against women, and Latino men, Black men, in many ways struggle and fight against the LGBT community. So if he's bashing them, then I'm with him because he's fighting somebody who I don't value or despise. And so that's really what's happening with us right now. And I'll tell you, Tommy, I just don't believe that that's sustainable, because I think at the end of the day, this election is going to be determined by the middle, by moderates and independents. Those are who are going to determine this election. And I think that the more raucous Trump becomes, the more angry he becomes, I think the more likely he is to potentially lose the race.
So with this strategy of raucousness, chaos, anger, I think there has to be some tipping point, a breaking point, a bursting point.
Right.
What, is that going to happen before the election of the president of the United States? Is it going to happen in the midst of that? We experienced something in this country, the United States, January 6th, right, a few years ago. Is it going to happen, shortly thereafter? There again, the precipice is there's a tipping point, a bursting point, where anger overflows.
Yep.
So if we're stoking the fires of anger, right, will we, and we is loosely used here, right, will we literally absorb ourselves in anger and actually be the anger that we're stoking?
Yeah, that's a good question, Tommy. And I'll tell you that, that's a very good question. I'll tell you that we are still in for some difficult days. Yeah. I don't believe that you should actually even be able to run for the presidency if you cannot accept defeat. In other words, if the only thing that you will accept is victory, then you should be disqualified for running for office, because you are going to harm our country again if you lose again. You only accept victories and failure, then your character says, I'll unleash them, the dogs, to fight you. And so, but the problem is when you're in the midst of a tribal kinds of debate, you are literally stoked up, encouraged, energized by that hatred and that anger. And I believe that we will have to break the fever. The way you break the fever is by information in part. So there's a study that was done in 2012 around how do we sort of reduce and eliminate unconscious bias. So 3 steps. Step number 1, you have to increase people's knowledge of inequity and how it's literally how it's impacting the lives of others. So you got to give them more of the facts and the data. Step 2, you have to increase their empathy and concern. I'm going to come back to that. And then step 3, you have to give them more strategies, tools, techniques to try to break out of this thing that they're in. But step 2, I think, is the most important. Once you get the data about how people are being impacted, I don't think that you actually can even fully embrace that without step 2. You have to increase empathy and concern. And the only way we get there, Tommy, is through greater relationship. So while many on the left or Democrats want to divest themselves of the Republicans and the MAGA crowd, that makes no sense at all. That's not wise at all. We've got to lean into one another, Tommy, and we've got to make friends of each other, because as we get to know each other, Tommy, that is the way out of this mess. We get to caring about each other. And so I care deeply about the Republican Party and the need for it to be independent. I care deeply for the MAGA crowd, Make America Great Again, the base of Donald Trump. I will not leave them behind either. We have to get beyond the game that we're in. We got to rise above that, Tommy, and care for our country, and care that we can bring individuals into enlightenment.
So I want to ask you this question in that same vein, and connect the question, Eric, to our discussion point today around identity politics and things like that, and then also personally. So the question is, when engaging with a person or a group of people, and they say something, whatever they say, for example, we can go back several years ago, and there was a particular political party that was saying, unity, 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 bring the country together. That's what was being said.
Right.
But the behaviors were very different. It was almost polar opposite, diametrically opposed. And so my question is, when you are, or we, all of us, are engaging with a person or a group of people, and we hear them say one thing, but their actions and the spirit that we're receiving is the total opposite.
Mm-hmm.
We want unity, but we are actually in the divisiveness business. Or when divisiveness is happening, that's not what divisiveness is. This is what it is.
Right.
So my question is, what do we do when we hear someone say one thing and do something different, where we're trying to attach our own identity to something that we can be comfortable with and hold on to?
I think that we have an obligation to recognize that politicians actually should not be viewed as our leaders.
Oh, wow.
We have to recognize that all sides will do this. It's a nasty business, politics. And so all sides are trying to tell you, believe me, I'm interested in what's in your best interest. And they would push your grandma off a cliff.
Yep.
And so, first of all, we have to know that nobody is really for us. Leadership is going to have to come from us through enlightenment and through not just being bought in to what the system is saying. We got to be able to rise above that. And Tommy, I think that we can. It will be building meaningful relationships, being informed about what we're in, and then having the courage, Tommy, to now stand up and say, this is an ugly game that you are being manipulated in. I was listening to a mayor on the border talking about what's really happening on the border. And I love this mayor. He said, I'm so sick of Washington 1,000 miles away trying to tell us what we should be doing here. He said that razor wire and walls are not the answer to the problems that we are facing here. He said, your solutions have to be humane. He said, you have to look at what's happening in the countries that these people are leaving. He said, and in many ways, when you're in a country of violence and killing, it makes common sense for you to try to come to someplace else. He said, we also need immigrants in this country. We're a nation of immigrants, and we need them to do the jobs that other people won't do. So what we really need Congress to do is work together to create sensible immigration reform. But nobody's interested in that, because then they would lose something to fight over. He said then the person asked him, well, what about, shouldn't we just close the borders for a while? So until we get this under control? He said, you can't do that. He said, our economy, there's hundreds of billions of dollars of commerce that's happening across the border every single day. He said, a bunch of that is coming through those of us that are closest towns to the border. He said, so you can't really shut that down. That makes no sense either. So he was showing us the foolishness of the arguments. And Tommy, I know inside myself, man, that when I saw us just throwing up razor wire and putting it down in the water and things like that, Tommy, to cut up and kill people, man, that's no answer.
Right.
That's a shame. We should be embarrassed to be doing something like that. Now, I understand that the amount of illegal immigration that's happening across our borders is not sustainable. We cannot be heaven to everybody around the world, no matter whether they're coming across our southern or northern borders. But we've got to, and I don't think that the answers are coming quickly if we are being led by people who have no interest any longer in coming together to talk about that which is in our best interest. The Senate is doing it right now, though, and Mitch McConnell and all of them. The reason why this fight that Trump is bringing, he's told the Republicans in the House, you can't buy it, because if Biden gets a win, then we lose in November. So that's what he's got them on. But here's the problem. You're actually going to lose either way.
Okay.
Here's what's going to happen, Tommy. So if you, if the Republicans in the House don't even put it on the floor, and so you can't get a bill put to Biden that he can sign, Biden can, through executive order, do it himself. He can use the Senate plan agreed upon by Republicans and Democrats, and he can, through executive order, put it in place. And so then he would get the victory for doing something on the border. And the Republicans then lose again. They don't get to say that we care about the border, because you wouldn't get another shot at this.
Right.
For 30 years. And you might not get another shot at this if the Democrats didn't need it. So if Biden wins, then who's to say if the Democrats will come back to it? I think they will, but who's to say they will? And so this is our only shot, but Biden has a chance to come out of this the kingmaker. So checkmate. And I'll tell you, Tommy, in terms of what will it take for us to break the fever, I think that's a powerful question. And they're saying it's not just information. In other words, information alone won't get us there, because rational actors, we are not. When we get caught up into tribalism and identity politics, it's going to win every day of the week. So really what we've got to do is we've got to go on a campaign of bringing Americans together. We've got to know each other. We've got to live together. We got to worship together. We've got to resist the temptation to demonize the other side.
But the challenge that I'm having with this, Eric, I agree with 99%. The 1% I'll push back is, what is American?
Ooh.
Because what I'm seeing right now is that when we are banning books for K through 12
Hostile.
because they're not American, right?
Hostile.
I've heard people say that that was an African American book. That was a book of the LGBT community. That was a book of indigenous Americans, and it's banned. And there's a small group of people who've been petitioning and winning these wars over books. And so the definition of American in that perspective is based on one group's, the dominant culture's view. When we talk about politics, the word American people is used so often by politicians. The American people believe this. The American
Right.
people don't want this. The American people. And I've always listened to it to say, are they talking about me as an American? Or
Right.
who is this American?
Right.
And then the third part is in bringing folks together, which I absolutely agree with you, in understanding whatever quote unquote American is, right? The third part is still to this day, Eric, I believe that there are a significant number or percentage of people in this country who are not native born of this country.
Mm-hmm.
They're not only coming from South America, they're coming from other parts of the world. Now, if they look a certain way, they may blend in better in this
Mm-hmm.
culture, this dominant culture, right?
Absolutely.
If they look like a person of color, there may be some bias or stereotype about them that is again reinforced through the propaganda of those who don't like them. You know, they're again rapists and criminals and all that good stuff based on colorism and sometimes racism. And so we, in our attempts to come together, have to set the rules of engagement first. How will we engage with one another? How will we have this conversation, this dialogue? And then that's the basis of trust, if you will. So we're
Right.
learning how to trust, basis.
Right.
The next is the willingness. Are we willing to have the conversation? Are we willing to trust one another to a
Mm-hmm.
degree, right? Whatever that means. Are we willing to identify that we may have separate goals, right? Or different goals,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because everyone doesn't want the same thing. Everyone does not want to be the president of the United States. Everyone doesn't want to be the president of their home owners association. Everyone doesn't want to do that. Some
Right.
people just want to go to work, make a good living, be able to take care of their families, and stay out of the way.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And then we have to say, finally, Eric, in this conversation, come together for unity. What's next?
Right.
After the conversation, we have to have some ownership and some accountability to continue to do
Right.
this. Dismantling of this process is from a particular group, maybe a
Right.
minority, that's saying we're going to burn it all
That's
down
right.
to have our voice and platform the only standing survivor.
Right. And so they're looking to create an apartheid situation,
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
a current day South Africa. There's a list of conservative organizations that have come together to build this strategy of dismantling DEI and equity based, fairness based. But here's the problem, Tommy. The problem is that 70% of progressive policies are things that progressive policies, 70% of Americans agree with them. So things like taxes on the increasing taxes on the wealthy, insurance, healthcare for all. Actually, 70% of our population in this country agree with those things. And so it's anti-democratic legislation and leadership. That's a problem. Is when you get to a place where politicians are no longer doing that which is valued by the people. So they're disregarding their constituents' interests and they're doing their own thing around this identity politics. I'll tell you, Tommy, that's not sustainable. The problem is that you keep picking with us, trying to take back rights. And it's like, it's an overreach. And so when you do enough of an overreach, and let's just look at abortion.
Mm-hmm.
That was an overreach.
Mm-hmm.
Supreme Court tried to ban it. Now, the Supreme Court said we can't make any laws around guns because it's complex. There's too many different guns. So we can't make any policy or laws to sort of govern guns and try to reduce, AK-47s and all like that. But now we're going to make laws about women and women's health and reproductive rights. That thing is so complex, and we're seeing it right now, Tommy. So what's happening all across the country, from one state to another, people are putting it on the ballot, and people are overturning that one state at a time because it cuts across party lines. And so I think that's where we're at, that these foolish overreaches that don't really reflect the people are going to cause you to lose everything. So it might be a run. I know that the thing that we did in 2016 is that we assumed that Trump could not win. And then we were shocked when he did. I'm not assuming that he can't win. I don't believe he will win.
Right.
That's what I'm saying, Tom. I don't believe he will win because I think that women will lead the way on this because I think that it's clear that it's a severe inconvenience for them. And when you start attacking your people and when your laws are taking away the freedoms and rights of people on all sides, that's when you start getting dinged at enough of a level it could be a democratic wave across everything, but stay tuned. But that doesn't get us out of our own responsibility, Tommy, to become more active in building relationships and not just demonizing the other party.
So in owning up to our own accountability and responsibility and engaging in conversations like this with individuals who may have a different mindset, right? Again, liberal and conservative, Republican, Democrat, right? Rich and poor. When having these conversations, Eric, share with me, what are a couple of steps to take when the conversation begins to break down? And we talk about that in kind of DEI, diversity conversation stoppers. There's some things that people say, such as, I don't see race. And you may be a person of color. That part of your identity is your race, your ethnicity, right? In the same vein, some folks may say, I don't really see nationality. And in the next sentence, I'm a proud American. Wait a minute, right? You're breaking down or putting up barriers to this conversation. Again, my question is, once the conversation begins to break down, what are some things that we can do to spark up and continue the conversation?
Right. So when the conversation breaks down, we probably need, at that point, what we needed from the outset is more listening. In other words, empathic listening is the answer. Talking less, listening more, and really replaying back to people what they've said, and to increase your curiosity. I don't care what people are saying, even if it's crazy. Sometimes we just have to demonstrate a curiosity to that in order to gain some level of trust. And then, because if you force people to listen to each other's sides and not just argue, but if I say something, then I also have to listen to you and repeat back what you've said, that helps us to get to greater civility and to humanize each other and not just be talking at each other. So I think empathic listening is a big part of what's needed. Doing more research about your own point of view, but also about other people's point of view and why they are where they are. I think agreeing with the things that people say that are true is something that it's hard for us to do when we're in a tribal debate.
Yep.
And so I think that we've got to just avoid tribal debates, Tommy, because they really don't serve a good purpose. They drive up our blood pressure, they drive up our level of anxiety, and they divide us from people who otherwise we could care about deeply. There's too much of this happening within families and within communities, man. And we've got to make a pact that I won't allow any of this foolishness to cause me to be separated from you as somebody that I love.
That's the pact that we have to make. Absolutely.
That's the pact that we have to make,
And that
Tommy.
takes courage. Yep.
And it takes
that takes courage to
patience.
make that pact.
It takes patience. It takes a realization that your side makes mistakes. And because we've got to find our way out of this. But many more of us are going to have to stand up courageously and oppose that which is evil and that which is against us as a nation. Because we don't want to find ourselves in a place where I'm willing to lose, progress and the right things if it costs you. I think that America has long been sort of had a love affair with demonizing marginalized people. We've got to, because bias is a human condition, all of us have to accept part of the responsibility to stop trying to do that. Because as long as we think it's just one group of people out there that's against everybody, we just need to, expel them from the country. That's not it. This is a natural human behavior, this whole tribal thing, in group, out group. You've seen it. We do it within our community all the time. Yeah. Are you Black enough? Yeah. And so all of us have to commit ourselves to becoming more informed, to become more engaged, and to try to lead with more humility and love.
As I mentioned before, Eric, over the arc of American history, unfortunately, we've been here before. Now we have to think about when we go all the way back to the Revolutionary War, we go back to the Civil War, we go back to any of these domestic wars, if you will. And these were battles amongst Americans over some principality or maybe even a societal construct. Right? Civil War was over a societal construct, and that construct was slavery, which was tied to economics, right? And so then we moved out of that and we went into an area where we were industrialized. And there was also a battle there too, where we had a separation of tremendous wealth with the Gilded Age, if you will, where folks like the Astors, et cetera, that had so much economic resources that they influence politics and policy.
Yep.
Then we get to a place of, the mid to late 50s, going into the 60s, where we had average people, Eric, sometimes even teenagers, who said, enough is enough. What's going around here is crazy. Right. I'm just going to stand up or sit down. Right? That's what it was. And it changed policy. So we can look at history because all of this that we're talking about is human beings.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And the younger generation is going to move us forward in this space. Tommy, let's hit just a few things that our audience, our community has put before us. When someone is using fear to control other people, then that person feels powerless. Any reaction to that?
I agree totally. Right. That sense of fear, that use of fear it's an operative emotion that can drive response. And one can control another person by that sense of fear, and then just keep stoking that fear, that the person that is involved in fear may feel absolutely powerless because they're constricted by that fear. And fear is sometimes unrealistic. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's the potential of it happening. So I will agree with that.
Right. Pamela says, don't trust no one but God. We tear each other down too much in this world. I can't believe nothing on the news no more. My spirit tells me. I don't believe a lot how the people are putting trust in man. Enjoy hearing you, Eric and Tommy. Need more love and not evil.
Yeah, need more love and not evil, right? We believe in God, and there's our own humane responsibility to understand what God is saying to us as humanity. That's one. Two, to be selfish and owning our own accountability. So it's not just the prayer and the thoughts, if you will, but it's also the actions that we can take to ensure that the earth that he's provided is better, right? And so we are living as humans, God-fearing humans on this earth, but our problem is not what God created. It's not earth, right? We may, as humans, be destroying it, yes, but the problem is the children of God are acting a fool. That's the principality. Yeah, the children are children. We've lost our minds. So
Right.
I would say to this point, Pamela's point was spot on. As a child, what did you dream about most? What did you want the most? You wanted to play, have fun, have some friends, love family. I think we need to get back to that juvenile essence of
Mm.
enjoying one another, right? Having fun, loving. And to do that, it's not through evilness, it's not through hate, it's not through hurt or harm. It is through love. So I agree with Pamela.
That's it, Tommy. Tommy, this thing just blew by today, man. And you
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
are probably going to have to revisit this a few more
yeah,
times before November. We'll have
yeah,
some
yeah.
guests on that will help to make sense. Maybe we can even reach out to this professor and see if Viliana, see if she's willing to join us, man, because I think that we have to keep educating ourselves about what's happening around us in ways that make us better ambassadors of love and growth and genuine development of people. We need empathy, more empathy and concern for one another, because there's a lot of pressure that people are under right now, Tommy. I'm watching my children go through their battles with racism and other isms in the world. And I'm telling them, don't allow the brokenness of others to infect you and to steal your joy. You have to know that when God is on your side, you have the most powerful resource in all the world that is with you. And just lead with those principles. On my good days, I do, Tommy. You catch me on a bad day, and I might just say anything. So, man, I appreciate you. I'm glad that you and Bryson are on the road together, man. That is a
Yeah,
beautiful testimony. Look forward to you getting back with a good report. And I'll let you have the final word for our community.
yeah. Thank you to our community once again. Those who have chimed in this morning, those who are going to be revisiting this conversation. This conversation, although we talked about politics, kind of the touching points for today, this topic can transition into other aspects of our lives. So again, thank you for joining this morning for another edition and installment of Diversity Conversations. Take care and be blessed. See you next week.